Hi, Peter Boyles, of course, the shoot, and this is a good one, but this is the project that came together with Mark Crowley and Brian Taylor and Kelly Michaels and myself to do a YouTube show. And I now get to do 9 to noon on Saturday mornings right down the hall here at 710 KNUS. But the announcement comes, how long ago did you first say this? I'm out of here.
About a month ago.
Month ago? Steffan Tubbs. And so he's on the farewell tour. It's like it's on the back nine, but I called him up and I said, hey brother, you're having everybody in the studio doing the See You Later show. Now you got to come in here and sit down. And he came in with a sport coat, and he came in to sit on and talk about it. Thank you so much,
brother. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody quits this business.
That's what I'm hearing.
Nobody.
Like, it doesn't happen this way.
No, guys,
and I got two phases of my career. You just recently on the shoot had Jerry Bell.
Right.
I owe the first part of my career to Jerry Bell. He was my news director at KOA. And I owe the second part of my career to you. Without you, after some tumultuous times in the summer.
Which we both had.
Yes,
yeah.
But mine in the summer of 2017, you were instantly on the phone. You were instantly my counsel. You were instantly the thorn in the side, my best buddy. And you made it possible for me to come over here.
Something has recently happened in the Denver broadcast scene, and DMAC got fired.
Yeah,
and
very good talent.
And I've been talking. I haven't talked to him, but we've been texting, and I suspect he'll be sitting in this seat soon. But it's much the same thing. I having been put out the door myself on occasion, and it's devastating. And
it's happened to me twice. The first time I got fired was in 1991, Halloween 1991. Mm-hmm. I was making $3 something an hour. I was a secretary at my very first radio job, KWDB, 92.5 country, San Luis Obispo, and I was able to do some newscasts on the weekends, and I really was a glorified, taking phone calls. Hi, I won tickets to the Mid-State Fair. Oh, let me take down your information. I got coffee for the GM. And I remember my program director at the time, his name Mike Wright, and he took me to the parking lot, which was about, 20 feet from where he said, hey, come with me. I'm sorry, I got to talk to you. It was one of the big satellite dish, like when they were as big as a house back then. And he lights up a cigarette and he says, I gotta let you go. And I was like, what? I'm not breaking the bank. But that was the first time. And then the second time I was canned was August of 2017. And again, you were right there with me. It's been told to me within the last few months, kind of on this farewell, at least the last month on this farewell tour, it's like, they did you wrong over there. Now, I take full responsibility for sending some mean text to an individual, but I was told that since, in the last 5-6 years, that they regretted that decision, and as they should. But I have enjoyed my time here so much, really some of the best times of my career.
I had this experience a few weeks ago. Mark Major, who is Tom Martino's right-hand man, called me up and he said, Tom's turning 70. And he would like you to come into the studio and co-host his birthday.
And you hadn't been back since?
It's been over a decade since I'd been in that building.
I remember that day.
And I said to him, and I cleared it with one to Kelly and Brian, said, look, they've invited me to come back, and I was filling in for you. And I said, when I get on the air, I'm going to hype that I'm working this afternoon, 7:10 KNUS, 3 to 7. And they called me back and they said, everyone that was involved in what happened to you has been fired. Please come back. And I was treated, Kathy Walker, Ross Kaminsky, Michael Brown,
Mandy
Kaplis, Mandy, everybody, of course Tommy, everybody came over and said, hi, how are you? Or called over to say hi. And I'm leaving, and I went down and I got in my truck, and that's a oval parking lot, it's a circle parking lot. And I'm sitting there and I said, 10 years ago, right about now, I was going through a divorce that I didn't want. My daughter had been diagnosed with some serious medical problems, now I've lost my job. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now what do I do? And I kind of told DMAC that story, and I remember telling you that story, that it's now's the time, and figure out who you are. And we were talking, I used to get my hands up a little bit when I was a kid, and had a couple of great coaches. One was Stan Szymanski, the Polish Falcon, and a Falcon would say, everybody gets knocked down. The real fighters stand back up.
You did tell me that.
I remember telling you.
You told me that within 48 hours
You're going to get knocked down.
of doing that. And I look at that time in my life, and it does seem like, as cliche as it is, it seems like a lifetime ago.
I know.
But as I've decided to kind of call it a career after nearly 34 years, I look back and I think just about now, I've never shared this. I think I'm finally proud of myself for what I went through. And I'm glad I'm telling you. I don't want to get choked up here, but I am my toughest critic. I am my biggest critic, right? And looking back and wondering, I never thought I would work in Colorado again. Forget Denver. I never thought, because of these lies, but people believe lies. And when I was canned, it was the height of the Me Too movement. So everybody automatically thought I was the scumbag. I mean, I never did anything of what I was accused of, but I think only now, Pete, over the last nearly 6 years here, that I've forgiven myself, but I'm proud of myself. And you know what? I mean, we try to kick ass and take names. You've helped me and guided me through, once I got here in, my show with, my name on it starts February 5th of 2018. And I remember you saying, you got to have a take. You can't just waffle. And man, I mean, I feel like I'm leaving at the top of my game. I feel like I got 15 years left in the tank, but I want to go out on my terms, which, as you started with, brother, that does not happen in this business. And I do want to also say thank you to our GM, Brian Taylor, Operations and Program Director, Kelly Michaels, Salem, corporate. They did not have to, I gave them 2.5 months notice, brother.
No, most people get treated like DMAC.
Or you get the...
Or me.
Yeah, or you get the tap on the shoulder, hey, come and see me after see me at 10 o'clock, right? And so I am, I'm not going to pull a Lou Gehrig here, but I do consider myself so fortunate.
Well, when you called me, and I thought, nobody walks but the mailman. What are you thinking?
You did say that.
Oh, no, of course. I said, what are you thinking walking out of radio? Most guys get blown out, or, it's a bad ending or something else happens. But, I mean, how many guys do you know that were in this business that ever got the gold watch?
None.
Yeah.
None. So again, I consider myself very fortunate. And the last, we've kind of started, as you said, we've kind of started on the regular program, which ends Friday, November 3rd. My family's coming into town. My kids are flying in from out of state. I don't know what. I told Brian Taylor the other day, I said, hey, if you could make that last show commercial break free, that'd be awesome. And he said something very funny that I don't want to repeat on this program, but I'll tell you off the air. But, look, I feel like I still have a lot left in the tank. That documentary filmmaking is extremely important to me. We're doing right now what I consider to be, and we're about at least halfway done with shooting this film. This, if I have my way, which I think I'm going to get, this will be the most important, impactful project that I've ever done. And it is Colorado's dealing with and fentanyl's impact on this state. And Pete, it's staggering. It's staggering, to put it lightly.
And Mark's behind the camera, but when we went up to Vancouver, the three of us, and that was the first vision of hell. And these idiots and they will bring it here. I mean, it's just no question they won't bring it here.
The supervised injection.
They'll bring it here.
Well, now you got Heroin Barbie, as we've called her, and I call him Fentanyl Phil Weiser. She's a member of the United States Congress, and she's
seen her
wanting,
interviewed on Channel 9 recently.
It's insanity.
Yeah, but it's almost like that line, "Who will stop the rain?" And I did a podcast with a bunch of guys for my first podcast experience last night, and
Welcome to 2023, by the way.
oh yeah, well I know it's like, and you and I talk about we should
Why not?
start doing podcasting where you name names and you talk. I mean, I've watched, and I was going to ask you your thoughts about podcasting because that could continue. I've been watching Rogan and watching some of these guys work. They're terrific.
Yeah.
I mean, but there are no filters. And I told you last night what that young kid said to me.
Yeah,
like, what?
I think I'll just jump in. And podcasting is most certainly the wave of the future, but the future is now. Yeah. Look, I was thinking this the other day, and I don't want to name drop, but this is farewell tour. For about an 18-month period in 2001 into 2002, when I was at ABC News in Los Angeles, for about an 18-month period, I had the mentorship of Peter Jennings.
Oh, wow.
And I remember when I left ABC at the network to take a television job full-time in New York, I had emailed Peter and I said, hey, I'm leaving, thank you for everything. I still have the email. Yeah. I printed it out.
Good guy?
Good guy.
Good.
Solid Canadian.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah. Really
good guy. But when I look back on those times, I was thinking yesterday, gone are the days, and there's the generation now and then everybody down the road. There will never, I don't think, be another time where there's a Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather.
It's over.
You'll never, certainly Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, Eric Severide, all of that's over with. So that brings me to the podcast. Gone are the times. I think it's only a matter of time. You're going to see local television. It's cheap. You know this.
Sure.
They do so many hours a week of local news because it's cheap and they can re-rack the tape, so to speak.
But the news isn't what people are seeking. It's mommy news. We do know that
Absolutely
Channel
correct.
9 made a decision to be the woke news outlet of the city of Denver or state of Colorado.
I won't name names, but I had a not at Narcan 9, but this is within the last 7 days. Yeah. I had an hour-and-a-half conversation with someone at a rival television station.
I'll tell you that.
Extremely successful and at the back end of this individual's career, and says, Channel 9 here locally blew it. When they decided to go that angle, I also heard, we're naming names, right? Kyle Clark, he's good on that show. He's good. I don't agree with anything that he says, but his show is great. But when he would then switch from his little hour show to go to do the 5, 6, or 10 o'clock news, ratings tanked. And that's because people don't want that crap anymore.
But I expect to see him go to CNN or MSNBC. I really do.
I think he probably already could have. And I don't wish him any ill will. For God's sake, he used to be on my program until, there were some producer issues. But, I just finished the thought that I think back to podcasts, that's what it's about. No longer the perfect set, the great background, the music, the big station voice, now the news. You're not going to, that stuff is old school, and the podcasting and dropping an F-bomb, maybe bleeping it out or maybe not, that's what people want. And finally, Pete, people want to consume what we do, what TV does, on their time and on their terms. And that's not having to make sure that you tune in, no offense to us, but 4 to 7 or 6 to 10 or the 10 o'clock news.
There was a great line somebody once said, the future is now. And the change has come to this business, radio, television, newspapers. I could not, if you were to take me back when I first got into this business over 30 years ago, I could have not imagined not doing a morning show without the Rocky Mountain News in front of me.
Isn't that crazy?
There is no more Rocky Mountain News. I have the Denver Post online, but I don't pay for it. I don't watch the evening news. I'm just done with what's being
When's the
presented.
last time you think, and I'm being serious
Sure.
here, when is the last time you think you watched from start to finish a local newscast?
I can't tell you.
20 years?
I mean,
But that's my point, right? I don't watch local news.
But they know it. They know that they have been so diminished as the radio business has been diminished. Newspapers almost don't exist anymore, if at all. I work for a monthly newspaper. But the rest of what's going on is going on with what we're doing right now on phones, on the internet.
Yep.
My grandson is, the only time he watches television was when there's a football game or a baseball game or something, a sports.
Pretty much, yeah, with me. Or you do on demand. I know you watch a lot of movies and a lot of old stuff like I do. The days.
But the question now is, and the thing that we've both made our bones in, is radio. What happens next to radio? Radio is sliding down the polls so fast. And I've critiqued this. It's angry white guy radio. One angry white guy followed by another angry white guy. Oh, next another angry white guy. Mm-hmm. And that makes the universe we're broadcasters, and I still imagine throwing a net as far out as you could to catch fish. Now we're doing this with a reel, and so it's like the old man who comes out and shakes his fist and tells you to get off the lawn, followed by another guy, followed by another guy, followed by another guy, and many of them telling lies. And so
I think there's a point though that still is important.
To what?
That still is important to, I guess, okay, I'm white. I'm not as young as I used to be, and I have no problem in being, if it takes hours, if it's a week, if it's a month of programming, if I've got to take that attitude of get off my lawn, the thing that I've tried to do, and I thank you, because early on in switching from news to talk, which is we could do an hour on that, how strange that is. But once you get into talk, one of the things that I'm proud of myself and our listeners, right, is they have an appetite, and people are sick and tired of, Crowley, can I say this? People are sick and tired of bullshit. They're sick and tired of lying. They're sick and tired of people like you and me sugarcoating things. They're sick of that. And one thing I've tried to do is, we said it earlier, name names.
Absolutely.
Name names. Don't well, that politician or whatever. No, people just cut through the BS. Tell me what you feel. I can then, as a news consumer or a news talk consumer, I'll either like you and agree with your take, or I'll disagree with your take, or I'll never listen again. But I think gone are the days of just tippy-toeing through.
I'm not sure that, it's, if I had my way, I would tear this building down, Samson and Delilah. It needs flushed out. The television news business needs flushed out. Talk radio needs flushed out.
But flushed out by what? Bringing in younger talent? Because let me tell you, where are the young men and women of, I don't care what sexual preference you are, what color you are, where's the younger radio generation that's going to come up and take in?
They're on the internet.
Correct.
They're doing those. But
100%.
But to bring people back to what this art form, which is really what it is, that I love, and I've seen back when. And I know you can talk about the golden age of the 30s and 40s, talk about top 40 disc jockeys that morphed into talk radio, but there was a time. The late Alan Berg was alive. There were people on the air, that it wasn't such a focus on craziness. And we would get like 12 and 13 and 14 and 16 shares.
Crazy.
What do they got now? Goose eggs. What, and the same.
If you're getting a 2 or a 3,
please
come on.
No, that's not there. Ratings used to count. I mean, it would be like we would get 4 ratings books a year, and you got a trend every month. Everybody would be knitting in a PD's office looking at the numbers. When's the last time you looked at the numbers? You don't care. The business has been that diminished, and television has also. I've gotten to know a couple of the old timers and well enough to sit and talk. Ward Lucas in particular. Lucas used to
Good
tell
man.
me, oh, great man.
Love Ward.
And he used to tell me the 10 o'clock show on Channel 9 Guess what their numbers were?
I think they were getting 48, 50.
Which means for every 100 sets turned on,
That's just insanity.
at least almost half of them were turned on to Sardella, Arakawa, Ward. They were there. Today, I bet there. And so if you have a 2.3, what does that mean? It means 2.3, because everybody else is watching cable.
Right.
The days of the networks are coming to an end. When you go back and look at what happened on January the 6th, broadcast news didn't know quite what to do. Cable did. It really goes back to when Ted Turner kicks off CNN and the first war in the Gulf, and they were there 24/7, and the networks.
And I miss those days, not the war. I miss those days of here we're just reporting. We got the cameras rolling. Here's your shock and awe. Now though, Pete,
but
they're all to a certain extent unwatchable.
But it doesn't have to be, and this is the conversation I've been trying to have with the powers that be, where we are headed with this business, and I'm an old man, where this business is headed is it's going to be the newspapers. It is going to be so diminished that no one will know what to do with it. I don't think it's dead yet, but I think it has to be brought back. And
it needs the paddles.
It needs fleshed out. It needs to get away from what it is, and our friends at KOA they're all hanging their hats on CU Boulder. They're hanging their hats on the Buffs, because I don't think they think that the Rockies, of course that's terrible, but I don't think they think the Broncos are going to have a good year. Mm-hmm. So what do they need? Wow. And we're going to do it on Saturday morning on a radio show. We're going to talk about that, because I was reading last night, I think it's a great on-air topic, that Black America allegedly has decided CU is their team. I think it's great to talk about stuff like that. That's away from Donald Trump had the election stolen, or the virus was manufactured in a lab or something. My God, how many more of those shows are you going to do? And how many are you going to do on all kinds of other things?
Okay, let me call you out. Because I love you.
Right.
You say that, yet you're a guy who spent a decade plus on Jean Benet. That's not a criticism.
No.
That is, I think there is an appetite.
But every
for
day that story changed. What I spent my afternoon with was what was the new parts of that story, and I had great friends through that. And so every morning when we went on at 5 a.m., there was new parts in that story.
The reason I bring it up,
it was like OJ.
Right, but I bring it up because I think you saw that, for everybody that said, I'm sick of hearing about it, there's 100 that want more. So there is a place for that.
But it was a morph. The story changed constantly. This stuff that we're listening to now is a grind. It's the same thing every day. And when confronted with the truth, it just doesn't matter. The Ramsey case ended when we're standing in the Boulder Justice Center parking lot, and Alex Hunter trots out and says, no indictments. And it takes a while, 2, 3, maybe 4 years later, a member of the grand jury comes out and says, we wanted to indict them both. And Alex Hunter wouldn't do it.
Right.
But, no, I mean,
my point of bringing that up is there
but that
is
was a
an
great
appetite.
story.
Right. Well, some would say, especially those anti-Trump, some would say that they can't get enough of January 6th coverage, and we got to have another mugshot. We got to have another indictment. Let's read the affidavit. We've got to do all of this.
If the universe is that big, fine. But we're broadcasters. We're not narrowcasters. This has forced us into this tribal situation where your tribe and my tribe, and this country, and when this radio business gets off the ground and these amazing people get involved in this business, and now it's slipped into madness, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Well, you talked about, Pete, the kind of in a roundabout way, the future of radio, right? Look, we've seen the automakers considering
Taking
taking AM out.
They have.
You've seen, and then the excuses of, well, it's messing with the frequency, the electric vehicles or whatever. Look, I don't think AM radio will truly ever die, but I couldn't agree with you more about, you're grasping at the firehouse pole, and you're really, as a broadcaster, we're not really in control of the speed of how fast we go down. And it is all about revenue. And then it gets into the broader picture to me of, well, where is the revenue now? You've got these podcasts, for example. You mentioned Joe Rogan, a guy that I've just kind of started to watch, Pat McAfee, who was a former punter. I mean, no offense to punters, but this guy's a former punter for the Colts, and now he's one of the top 3 hottest podcaster guys, so much so that Disney, my former employer, puts him an unfiltered, I think it's either 10 a.m. Mountain or 11 a.m. Mountain. He goes an entire hour, no commercial breaks. That's airing on ESPN. Yeah. So that is where it's at. I think radio simulcasting, podcasts, thanks guys for not doing my show podcast wise, but look, that people again want another avenue, another way to see radio, another way to use it. George's show in the morning here on 710 is 6 to 10 via YouTube. You can watch it live, you can watch it later, but it goes back to the consumer has changed so much. You got to make that stuff available, and I think advertisers are seeing that.
Advertisers are fleeing radio. When's the last time you heard a car dealer on the air?
Fair point.
Last time you heard an airline advertised on radio? And when back in those salad days, we would have United, we'd have the Greater Denver Chevy dealers, we would have guys. I had Medved for years. It's
10 electrical companies, plumbers, all painters.
And a lot of it is people don't want to be associated with the insanity that's being pumped out. That they know that Colorado is a purple, perhaps blue state. Why would I want to have my name connected with my company's name connected with the lies that are being told?
And let's just be honest, that what you're talking about has absolutely happened, and no offense, it's happened at 710, it's happened at 850, it's happened at 630, but it's absolutely it's happened, and it's happening, and it continues.
But that's because this guy, if you advertise on XYZ show, and then the people out there, the hyenas are out there, they pick up the phone, they call the sponsor. They don't call the radio station.
Correct.
And they threaten the sponsor. And so, I mean, all of this stuff, what it really gets down to is a pending civil war, perhaps, or the politicization of everything that we once. And the late Alan Berg, and I've told this story too many times, but we got snail mail. We didn't get email or text messaging or. And he taught me this gift, and we're working at KOA, and we would get mail, and he would open the letter, and he'd look, and if it wasn't signed, throw it away.
Yeah.
And now you're constantly barraged, and your sponsors get calls and all this kind of stuff. This country is sitting on a keg of dynamite, predicated on lies that are being told. What Fox News did through this is unforgivable.
Well, they're literally paying now, aren't they?
Well, they are.
Literally.
I'm reading the new book, Hoax, about Fox, and Newsmax, and all these different outlets. So we're coming to a point where we have to get honest about the business of delivering. And the guys are talking about the Fox News guys walking on January 6th with the crews, and people are screaming fake news at Fox. And the guys looking at each other, the cameramen are looking at each other. We're fake news now?
Yep.
And
have I mentioned, Pete, that I'm happy that in doing my final broadcast on Friday, November 3rd, I will miss literally, I will miss an entire 12-month period from November 23 to November 24. I will miss the political presidential cycle, and let me tell you, I ain't gonna miss it. However, I will miss the show. I think I maybe have told you, come Monday, probably come Saturday, November 4th, but Monday, November 6th, when I don't have the show, I know I'll be busy with the film that we're taking right now on fentanyl. By the way, a May 2024 release on that, but I know I'm going to miss it. But I'd rather go out on my terms, and the fact that I don't have to deal with 15 hours a week live on the radio, the emails, the texts, the phone calls, that I just may say something that offends somebody to where you're not talking good about the guy that I like or the woman that I like, I'm happy that will be eliminated, because I've done that enough. And the last couple of presidential cycles they're taxing. I mean, it gives great fodder, but it's taxing.
I think what people don't understand, and I've gotten to know some pro athletes in my life while they were playing, and politicians while they were serving in office, and jerks like us that do radio shows, is that we live this. We have a friend right now who's struggling. We both know who this is. He's struggling because he doesn't understand this segment of, these guys are going to rip your head off if they can. And pro ball players that have a bad game. Look at when Tom Tancredo was in Congress,
Right.
and Tommy's one of the dearest friends I've ever had in my life. We have lunch together. He sat in this room. We talk a lot. That stuff, they did a job on him. The Denver Post did a job on him. Other people did a job on him. Tom's one of the most decent men I've ever known. Frank DeAngelis, who I'm going to see tonight. What they did to Frank after Columbine, he had nothing. I mean, he was just this figure that they could go after. And so when you're throwing that mic switch and you're getting up in a snowstorm and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and all kinds of other things are going on in your life, back out of the garage in 4-wheel drive and come here to go to work, you better be ready.
Yeah.
And it's okay, because that's part of the contractual agreement, the social contract, if you would, that you have with the audience. But I know ball players that cried after a game because they'd made a mistake playing. They're not immune.
No, I mean, and I've tried to counsel you, though I'm just a little bit younger than you. You can give 110% to this amazing, wonderful career, but try not to have it be defining your life. And I say a lot on the program, I try not to take the job home with me. But good God, man.
Take it home.
It's hard. It's hard not to. But you know what? And I don't know if you've ever said on the air, the one thing I can say with certainty is I end my career never, ever taking for granted the opportunity to push that microphone button on. Seriously, and I'm not trying to get all philosophic on you and make you cry. I'm just saying, as we tape this, I'll have a show in several hours. Mm-hmm. I don't dread it. I've looked forward, especially here at KNUS, because I had to make that switch from I'm trying to be Mr. Down the Middle newsman to you're damn right I'm pissed off. I'll name names. Especially now, I don't care, but I've never taken it for granted, and I'm glad personally I've never taken it for granted. And then the other thing I try to convey is how appreciative, even the people that like literally hate me. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've had death threats in your career. I have, even maybe not to the ones that have administered death threats because how ridiculous, but to those that disagree with me or vehemently hate me, there's a part of you that appreciates them too, because they've given you enough time to form an opinion, whether they like you, they have no opinion, or they hate you. But the two things that I leave with, most certainly number one, is I've never taken it for granted, and I've always realized what a privilege it is to be able to have the opportunity to have a few more people than the normal hear you. And then I've always wanted to make sure that I convey my appreciation for people that tune in.
You do not have a divine right to throw the mic switch.
Right.
Taught to me by Bob Lee and Hal Moore and Lindsay English and Uncle Mike McEwen, and there was a list of these guys that influenced me as a kid coming into the business. You have no divine right to that job. And
if you suck,
you'll
certainly quickly find out that people think you do.
And we serve at the king's pleasure. Anytime the king wants to come in and pull you out of there, the king can do that. So that was, and I always called it, we cowboyed the job. When I first came in, we were cowboys. When I got to talk radio, and I'd been a traffic reporter, and I'd been an MOR disc jockey, and I've been a country jock, and I've been through all of that part of it. But when I get to talk's new. And we cowboyed this business. Now, Limbaugh comes along and literally changes everything, but we didn't have a format. We knew that you had to take a spot breaker. Berg taught everybody how to sell live and, all this kind of stuff. That we were cowboying the job.
Can I give you my cowboy example?
Yeah.
This is going to sound really, really cocky, but what are they going to do? Fire me?
Yeah.
During COVID, I basically cowboyed, if I'm following where you're going with this. I look back now, and this wasn't that long ago. This was a little more than 3 years ago. I went into Brian Taylor, our GM, and I said, yeah, this COVID thing, this could be the biggest story of our lives. I'm going to do 4 hours, and I'm going to start today, or tomorrow, make it happen.
Right.
I know that's cocky. I know that sent a lot of people like, wait a minute, what? But I'm like, this is important. We have enough here. Let's do a 4-hour show. So when I started, I was 4 to 7 for the first couple of years, and then COVID hits, and I'm proud of that kind of, I guess, to use the cowboy analogy. I came in with a lasso, and I lassoed Brian, and you know what? It worked. And then, since that kind of died down, we went back to 3 hours. But I'm proud of that we were still in a position where, let's adapt a little bit. This COVID thing is pretty big, and
But seeing it and doing it, but cowboying it means we didn't know what to do. We were seat of the pantsing. We would huddle each other and say, well, what do you think about this? And we worked for some really smart men that would give you your head and let you do it. But as you pointed out, soon they would know, particularly predicated on something that used to be called the ratings. And the ratings would hit. And
is it working? Is it not? Well, for example,
when
we went to 4 hours on my show, spring of 2020, for about 6 months at least, you know what? The show was sold out.
Yeah.
And back to your thing, here, and this is no secret, I mean, KNUS does not subscribe to the book. And you know what?
But you can see the numbers.
You can see you're the best at that. You always have told me. But it's a perfect example of, first of all, it costs a hell of a lot of money for a radio station to subscribe to the book to see your number. But what's it based on? It's based on revenue. And now, 3 years later, it's not just this station. KOA is probably a fraction of what it used to bill.
But ratings are revenue. Revenue are ratings. It's this equation, R equals R equals R.
Yeah.
And back in the day when there were 23 shares and 24 shares, and United Airlines, I would be in those meetings as a young kid, and there would be agency buys, and they'd say, take me 3 deep. Well, what 3 deep meant was find the top 3, and the disposable income demo was 2554. Find me the top 3 shows with 2554, and they go down 1, 2, 3.
And that's how they bought it.
Whoever it was, we buy them. And then the agency would take everybody to lunch, and usually a lot of alcohol was involved in it, and they would try and beat you down, and you were trying to beat them up, and there was a rate. You went out with the AE, now the sales geek, and everybody made a deal. I watched it. I was part of it again and again and again. Can you voice this spot? Can you do this? That doesn't exist. That's gone.
Do you remember in the KOA hallway, there was the trophy case.
Of course.
And I remember when I got to KOA in spring of 1994, there was a coffee mug. And
I got one at home.
Okay, so I know I'm not wrong on this. The coffee mug was celebrating the morning show, and it was that book.
It's a combination.
14.9.
But it also, on the same cup that I have, has Q, later becomes the Fox. And we're down on Lincoln Street before we go to Lawrence. And it's KOA.
And that's where I met you, at Lawrence.
Yeah, and it was KOA TV, KOA Radio, KOA on air, and then Q, they called it the Q, and it was an automated FM. And they pulled the numbers. They were guerrilla numbers.
14.9 for the morning show. I think when I was doing mornings for 13 years or whatever at KOA, I think the best book we ever had, I mean, this is off the top of my head, it was less than 5.
Yeah.
But you look at that, and those are the days of the late Gus Merkus, who I got to work with. I was, I would ask Gus every morning. I got in at 1, so he would come in. He and Kelly, by the end of Steve Kelly, by the end, if they were both there by 5 minutes to showtime, it was awesome. Now I understand it.
What a mistake.
But you had both of them there, and I'd ask Gus, good morning, how you doing, Gus? And he'd always say it rhymes. It rhymes with Biddy, but he would never say Biddy. But I look back, and man, Keith Wyman, Chris Fitzrandolph, Gus Merkus, you,
Christine, everybody's there.
Chris Olinger, Jerry Bell, I mentioned earlier. Kathy Walker,
Al Verlay.
Al Verlay, Traffic Copter 850. I mean, those. I feel that getting here when I did was in the spring of '94. I feel like I got a little taste of the glory days.
That radio station. I'm a kid, and I get a job as the writer for the traffic reports. And one of the trades that they had was they traded with the Auto Club, and the Auto Club traded with KOA. So I remember when they would take a picture, and they could add people into the picture. And there's a thing called cab backs and bus sides. They don't do it anymore, but on the sides of buses, on the backs of cabs. And they had a picture of the KOA morning team. It was immense. I bet there was 20 people in this picture. And in the back left row, they imposed me because I was the traffic reporter. I remember running down the street next to the bus to see my picture on the side of the bus.
Were you ever on a billboard?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
bus bench?
I'm sure I had. Sure. I mean, I still have one of the billboard, the picture of Bob Lee and I have it framed at my house on the wall of Bob when we were a billboard. But here I am for the first time getting a little taste of it, and I'm running along, like looking at my picture.
That's pretty awesome.
True story. And then I went from being with Bob, being Bob's travel and recreation reporter on Saturday mornings on KOA, and we're doing phones, and I'm working 7 days a week, going to school. And
you imagine a radio station today, somebody comes into a meeting, if they even had a promotions person, which those positions have been eliminated. Somebody said, how about we do a campaign? We'll put our morning show crew on a side of a bus, on a billboard or a bus bench. No, I'm saying today. Could you imagine? They'd say, yeah, next idea.
Run you
just
off. Yeah.
Wouldn't happen
But
anymore.
that's part of the diminishment of, we're looking at our time right now, but that's part of the great slide that's happened. And there may come a time, and I'm not convinced it won't, that what we did will go the way of the newspapers. And one of my dearest friends, who's been my guru, my rabbi, is Dean Singleton. And an entire empire is lost. And and so...
Yeah, it was a sad day when this town went from a two-paper town to a one.
Then a one to a nothing. And now the Denver Post, I mean, they claim they're making money.
Have you picked up a Denver Post? No offense, but
sort of like this,
right?
But it used to mean something. KOA's morning news would mean something, and perhaps now I got my phone in my pocket. You got your phone in your pocket. When I go home, I won't turn on TV.
Right.
You know, there's a couple of things I'm reading right now. I'm reading a book called Hoax about Fox News that I recommend, but I don't know, leave us with something. Nobody walks out of this business, Tubbs. No, come on, walk.
I'm either going to be making
Back?
well, no, see, that's the thing.
Let's do a pod.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
get
think.
crowded.
I mean, I don't think my putting messages out there, whether it's me in my living room doing a Facebook Live, but I guess I'll leave you with this: what a lucky man I am, and that has about 14 different avenues. Right? I'm lucky to have covered some of the biggest stories of the last 30 years. I say it's never lost on me that my biggest highlights on my resume, sadly, are people's worst moments of their lives. 9/11, Columbine, the Aurora Theater shooting. I mean, there's just natural disasters. I've been able to travel the world doing this career. I feel so fortunate. I feel so fortunate in the second half of my career, which really, years-wise, isn't directly the second half, but thanks to you, to KNUS, for letting me go and take my career in a different direction and to do talk. This thing, there's no regrets. I don't have any regrets, but I think if I had to find one, it would be I could have probably done 10 more years of talk, because it's just, and I loved my news career. I still consider myself a newsman, but I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to do talk, toward the end.
My story, I'll leave you with that moment. I'm a Norman Mailer geek, and when I was an undergrad, there was a course on Norman Mailer. It was a 300 level on Norman Mailer. We read Fire and the Moon, Executioner's Song, The Naked and the Dead, The Deer Park. I can still name all the Mailer books. Mailer is coming to Denver. I went out of my way, and we've both done this, to get somebody with you. And Mailer came into the studio. He's Norman Mailer. And I think it's like his fifth wife, when she's laid out. And the book was called Harlot's Ghost, and it's about the CIA. And he was, this handler said, Mr. Mailer can spend a few minutes with you. And he ended up for 2 hours.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Because we talked about the Deer Park, we talked about Armies of the Night, Fire and the Moon, Executioner's Song, and he's looking at me and he goes, God, this guy's read my work. So the show's over. And he stands up, and he had signed my copy of Harlot's Ghost, and he's got my hand, and I remember who I am. And he said, what did you think of the book? And I said, you've done better work. And
did you respect that?
He thanked me. He said, thank you. And later, so I sit back down when he leaves, and I think, I grew up on the Allegheny River, skinny little Irish kid, and Norman Mailer asked me what I thought about his work. Whew. And I sat back down in the chair and thought about that I still think about it. Mm-hmm.
But this career
brought me
provided you, and you were able to
we
have that interaction.
Pappy Boyington, I mean, all these wonderful people that come in and out of your life. And I told this story. I'm doing nights on KHOW, and I'm drinking then. And Boyington was coming for an air show. And if anybody knows, Baba Black Sheep, and it's the real guy, Greg Boyington. And he came in the studio, and another one of those, fifth wife. And he's got a little handler guy from the air show, and he talked like this, and so I always brought alcohol to work on Friday nights. And it was a Friday night show, and I don't know, I had 12 beers or whatever I had. And so he came in, and we did 8 to midnight, and I said, Colonel, would you care for a drink? What do you got? And I said, and he, honey, and she opens up this big purse and gets out a flask. He's there. He's good to go. About 11:30 that night, And he stays and tells stories by Claire Chenault and all these great, wonderful stories. About 11:30, this guy calls in Colorado Springs, and John Bailey, the board ops, said, take this call. And I said, Colorado Springs, whatever the man's name, you're on the air. And the guy said, Pappy. And he said, what? He said, where were you Christmas Eve, 1944? He said, I was in a POW camp, Yokosuka, Japan. I'd been shot down. Why? He said, I cut your hair that night.
Wow.
Was his cellmate.
See,
Phew.
that is the beauty
Of the business.
of the business.
Not this stuff now.
No.
But
no.
they-
And you know what? If I just
Sure.
want to make sure I say this,
Yeah.
because I'd be remiss if I didn't. The ability to, over the last 30 years plus, to be able to try to be an advocate for our veterans. If I can be remembered, if I got hit by a bus tonight, wasn't he the guy on the radio that supported the veterans? And now with this, the anti-fentanyl crusade that I'm trying to become more familiar with, man, the work with our veterans has been the honor of not just radio life, but my life in total. And I thank you.
The one and only Steffan Tubbs. Mark, you took a long time with this one. We went a long time because I knew it was going to be a long time. But as the man said, you've been a long time coming, you're going to be a long time gone. We'll see what happens next. I'll see you Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, 710 KNUS. We're going to talk about Deion Sanders and CU and the culture of what takes place next. Thank you. See you. Bye.